Florida and LSU, two storied SEC programs, have been on heaters when it comes to the recruiting trail, have been white hot. And so I think we need to just take inventory of what both these programs have done and ultimately what this means for both these programs, because they're both under first-year head coaches. Florida gets Billy Napier, LSU gets Brian Kelly, and it's just remarkable how much of a tear they've both been on. And obviously, Billy Napier coming from the Group of Five and Brian Kelly coming from Notre Dame, they both felt like maybe they didn't have the firepower to recruit like they wanted to at their previous positions, but now they are bringing the juice to the recruiting game. And so we're just going to start with Florida. Billy Napier, as of the time of this recording, has Florida sitting at number 10 in terms of the national rankings for their recruiting class. And the thing that stands out the most to me about this is they've done a lot of it with in-state guys. 80%, 16 of their 20 commitments are from the state of Florida. That is a huge deal. He has a quote out. He said, "Start at your home base and work your way out." That's Billy Napier talking about how he wants to structure Florida's recruiting. Of the entire class that he has committed right now, the average distance from Gainesville is 165 miles. That is not far at all. I mean, he's going just down the road to get these kids. And so what that says to me is, okay, you're putting a fence around your area in Florida. And then they're moving into other areas as well. I know they got a commitment from the Miami area. Florida as a whole just has so much talent. And for Billy Napier to say we got to start in the state of Florida is a very welcomed adjustment for this program. Because if you remember correctly, one of the biggest gripes that the Florida fan base had with Dan Mullen was they said he didn't take recruiting seriously. He would kind of recruit when it was time to recruit, when it was time to play games. He was focused on that, and that's good and all. But in the SEC, especially in the state of Florida, if you are not recruiting 24/7, you are behind the eight ball. And so for Billy Napier to make it a point to say, no, we're going to recruit early, we're going to recruit often, and we're going to recruit our immediate area effectively, that is a huge deal. Last year, they had the number 20 class. As it stands right now, they have a top 10 class. I would assume they'll finish in the top 10, if at the very worst, the top 15. They're going to be a better positioned program for the future because of how Billy Napier is approaching recruiting. Also worth mentioning, that mark I gave you, 165 miles from Gainesville is the average distance for the class right now. That is the smallest average distance from 2004 to 2023. I guess 2022. This is a 23 class. Bottom line, he's killing it. They're making it a priority. Also, if you saw what was going on the Florida Twitter, if you follow anybody from Florida Twitter, they got themselves a nice new facility. You don't think that'll help with recruiting? Bottom line, recruiting is a priority in Gainesville, and Gator Nation's fired up about it for good reason. For LSU, they have the number 6 class right now. They've got 20 commits, similar to Florida, also has 20 commits. The same tune rings true for LSU. They have made it a point to make LSU a program that wins Louisiana. And my first thought is you should win Louisiana if you're LSU. Like, you should be able to get who you want in state. Because in state, there's nobody else, and this is not a knock on La Tech, this is not a knock on Tulane, but there's nobody else that you really need to try and recruit over in your backyard. Now, you got Alabama close, you got Florida close, you have a lot of SEC schools close, but in your state, you should be able to sell, hey, stay home and win titles at LSU. They call it NFLSU, which that in itself should help recruit. And I love the way that Brian Kelly has done this, kind of picking who they want from this class. I mean, right now, of the top 15 players in the state of Louisiana, they have roughly a third of those guys and stand in some pretty strong position based on the RPM here at On 3 for a number of other guys. But I think we also need to take a look at what this means for Brian Kelly. Because if we're reading between the lines here, he left Notre Dame because he didn't have the firepower and the resources that he needed to be able to get it done. And he, like I said as much between the lines. And so for him, all those excuses are gone. You can't say, hey, we're not getting the guys that we want to get from an admission standpoint, or it's hard to go out and recruit with South Bend as one of our calling cards. It's hard to get kids to come to Notre Dame and get them to school. That's not the case at LSU. Everything you need from a football standpoint and from a recruiting standpoint is available to you. They do football 24/7 and nothing else. And that is meant as a compliment, 100%. 100%. So that's to say the pressure's now on Brian Kelly. You got to win. You got to do this now with this recruiting class. But for them to be sitting at number 6 right now with the 2023 class, and to have guys like Ricky Collins, Kylan Jackson, Shelton Sampson, all committed, huge deal. Huge deal for them to be building within Louisiana and getting top talent in state. So they continue to stay white hot. Both these schools, I think Florida had 3 commits in the past week. Keep an eye out for some of these kids to potentially take a second look at some of these programs now. But if you're in the state of Louisiana or Florida and they want you, they're going to find a way to get you. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.